skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek.
Excited for you. Because that just sounds like a fun time for everyone. For everyone involved. I feel like, you've never been different sober, but I want to continue smoking with you. I like smoking with people.
Yeah.
It was like that time no, you weren't there. I came over on New Year's and we were playing that card game. Every card about doing drugs or getting drugs from your friends
Captain Death.
Went to Captain Death. And I did not take it offensively. I am a product of my livelihood.
There's pride
and almost every card also about like meaningless sex, which is just like, my friends know me so well. like I really felt like a piece of shit on New Year's, and then I came into that party, which wasn't a party. Like, let's lay it out there for all the listeners that have been at that party. That was not a party. No one was drinking. It was a bad time for everyone.
Why was no one drinking?
I don't fucking know. Everyone was sitting on couches.
Was there like drama like before you got there?
I don't think so.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, but man, I don't know. That gave me a kind of reality check, and I say that as we've been discussing my alcoholism and drug use in the past, and I'm stoned because this is Lotsa pasta. And
Lotsa pasta.
And I'm here with Django.
That's good.
Yeah, I was trying to imitate.
Perfect, yeah.
I was trying to imitate how you would do it.
Django.
Yeah, you got more baritone. I was like, Django. So this is Lotsa pasta, and step number 1, ladies and gents. Django Phillips is holding up a finger.
It's the middle finger. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
No.
Fuck you, listeners. So, step number 1 is, I hope you're comfortable, and I hope you got your drugs handy, because this episode I want you to, like, trip fucking face. Literally.
Okay.
Literally
Yeah.
take your listening device and go into the bathroom, put a towel under the cracks in the door, and then, like, turn your shower on to, like, 75% hot.
Yeah.
And hotbox your fucking bathroom, and then
I like it.
Continue listening to this podcast.
Get a plastic bowl and get a broom and put it over your fire alarm in your apartment, and then crack the window and just smoke out the window and like smoke out in the parking lot so people underneath your window get a residual high. Do that. Do that for this episode.
I like it. The way it started, it sounds like you were giving instructions to like start some kind of like gravity bong, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know Django Phillips was like into
so
gravity.
Fun,
Have you done
yeah,
it? Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't take you for a gravity
So
bong
fun.
individual, but you what you were talking about there was being considerate about
Yeah,
smoking.
you have to make sure your apartment's very clean, and you don't want to set the fire alarm off.
So yeah, I hope you're nice and baked, because these episodes are so much fun. We kind of tell like realistic stories. That's kind of the thing. This is your 5th episode. We've been doing this since episode 1, and we still have 50 pages of material. It's fucking awesome. This stuff is ongoing. I don't do a series with like anyone else. I have the material. Just no one wants to. They just want to read Troll Pasta. Have you listened to any of the recent episodes?
They just want to hit and quit it.
Because the Troll Pasta has been dreadful. The Troll Pasta doesn't get better, but the Creepy Pasta does. The Reddit no sleep kind of stories, like those ones have gone up.
Yeah.
I would say everything from everything from 16 onward has a relatively good vibe.
Cool.
Big hitter stories. Yeah, this is episode 31, so this is probably not gonna be up till like fucking May or June,
You're hearing us in the future.
Yeah,
Whoa.
This is the past. Marty! We're gonna start.
And then Marty comes in and he's like,
Marty...
Doc, why the fuck would you build one? There's so much just fucking plutonium.
I don't know, Doc.
Doc, where are we gonna get the plutonium? Yeah. One of my favorite movies. It's great.
Oh, the movie's fucking amazing. And I know so many people who haven't.
Can we take
seen
a quick detour to talk about movies?
No, we're still with
horror themed.
We're still within the first 10 minutes. So yeah, definitely.
So I'm always behind the 8 ball on movies. I've never seen any movies, as Captain Death knows. If you ask me about
the last 2
very
episodes,
famous movie, haven't seen it. So Green Room.
Fucking love that movie.
Loved it.
Wasn't that great?
Such a great movie.
Yeah, that was one of the best horror thrillers in 2016.
Yeah,
hands down.
Yep.
I put that's up there to me with the new Blair Witch and Autopsy of Jane Doe. Best fucking horror thrillers of the last year. Because
you're like, let's make a monster. Let's make a vampire or a zombie. What about a fucking skinhead?
Yeah. Because they exist. And they're in control of the government. That's Patrick Stewart.
Basically.
Right? Fucking awesome. That role was so crazy
really
for
good.
him.
Yeah.
So crazy, but I fucking loved it. I just saw, in the last week, I finally got around to Neon Demons, which is Nicholas Refn, I think his last Wendig. Yeah, he did Drive.
Okay.
He did Drive. He did the Valhalla Rising with Mads Mikkelsen. Fucking amazing. This dude makes good movies. I was watching it with Terry the Tickler. Great art house horror.
Okay.
The Eyes of My Mother, The Eyes of Your Mother. New art house horror released in 2016. Fucking amazing. I know these are a little bit left field because it's kind of the art indie scene.
No,
but I feel like you'd be into that.
Yeah.
Eyes of Your Mother, Neon Demons, and then I just saw in theaters. I just saw The Cure for Wellness.
How was that?
Gore Verbinski going back to his horror thriller, tapping into The Ring a little bit. It was very Fincher.
Okay.
Which is great. Mm-hmm. And it was like Hitchcock and Fincher had a baby together, and it was basically a remake of the Dracula story. Which I know surprises a lot of people when I say that. But it's not... It takes the bare bones of Dracula, which is weird dude living on top of a hill and kind of has this weird power over people kind of thing. And there's this weird kind of operation going on. And it's very Hitchcock in the sense that we're just following this character the entire movie. We don't see any other scope. We don't know his history. He's so selfish. He dips back into it as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
And you just learn more and more. It's a 2.5 hour long movie, though.
Wow.
There's so much that could have been cut, but then you look at the cinematography and it's just physically just what the fuck? Just so much weird imagery, and the twist is great. I know I already said Dracula, and it's not he's definitely not a vampire, but there's this weird supernatural kind of thing, science-y though. That ends up taking place in the final act, and
so you recommend?
I fucking loved it, and I know it's not getting good reviews.
Yeah.
But then again, I've loved almost everything Verbinski has made. Rango is one of my favorite animated movies of all time.
Rango.
Yeah, no, they do say that in the movie.
Do they?
Yeah. Rango. It's a spaghetti western.
Yeah.
I fucking love Rango. Ring, the first Ring is great.
Okay. He did the first American Ring?
Yeah, the American Ring.
Gotcha.
And then he also did... I think all 3 of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And the second one is also, top-notch fucking sequel making.
Okay.
Cool. Great thrillers, great art house thrillers and horrors that have come out in the last, year. And Green Room is indie.
Yeah.
Green Room was
A24.
Indie funded. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
I also like to watch a lot of Magnet's indie horror as well. It's always really, really great quality stuff. Is there anything else that's been going on?
We're seeing Get Out tomorrow, though.
Oh yeah, I think I'm
Pretty
seeing
excited.
that on. I would have fucking saw it tonight, but I'm not gonna say his name. I'm not gonna say because then I'll have to play the fucking theme song. I was supposed to
say his name.
I was supposed to see it with Disco Dracula tonight. He said he went to the gym and Django's dancing. Even though there's no music playing here, but he's knowing that I'm gonna put the music in. And then I'm going to cut it now so that You sound awkward. I'm actually gonna cut it like 3 seconds ago, so we can just hear you moving on this couch because it's gonna pick up.
Good. Move on.
Oh man. Okay. So we digress. We've been stoned and joking and talking about movies, which is pretty much happens on every episode. It's kind of our update of this week with the people on the show, like what's going on in the world or what great entertainment-wise is out, and like we love to talk about movies, video games, music, everything.
$100.
Yeah.
$100.
So because we run with kind of realistic stories, we're gonna read a Reddit No Sleep series. It's just a short series. It takes place in 3 different and actually disjointed parts. Like, they're not linked to each other on Reddit. But if you come across them, you could read them in sequence. And since I've started from the beginning, I've actually collected all 3. Cool. And then I did a search to make sure there was no 4 or 5 or anything else. There is a very definitive ending, apparently. This is Confessions of a Deep Sea Diver from Reddit No Sleep. And I feel like the reason I grabbed this is because of the U.S. Forest Search and Rescue Ranger. Rescue Rangers! They're the series we've been doing, which is very, it's very similar to a kind of, like, diary.
Yeah.
You know? So this, I feel like
occupational, real life.
Kind of run with realism.
So this is Confessions of a Deep Sea Diver, found on Reddit No Sleep. I recently left my job as a deep sea diver. I work for a large company that offers diving services ranging from salvage, underwater demolition, ship repairs, and search and recovery. They are a reputable company and are considered safe and reliable. So much so that they are often contracted by the government. Truth be told, I'll miss working for them. The people I worked with were truly the best of the best. But there are only so many unexplainable things you can witness in the deep before you decide to stay out of the ocean forever. Here are some examples of the secrets many divers take to their graves. On the way to a job we were contracted to perform, our propeller became fouled. I suited up and prepared to make a quick dive to remove the fouling. I did a brief inspection and located a thick line wrapped around the prop in the shaft. I notified the supervisor, who then lowered a canvas bag with the tools I needed to cut it off. I hung the bag from the shaft and began freeing the propeller. It didn't take long.
You're waiting for me to say something about the shaft. At first I thought, I notified my supervisor, who then lowered his pants to let me stroke the shaft. But then it said cut it off, and I was kind of, compelled not to say anything at that
I just have a 4-year-old's, sense of humor.
No, you don't have to tap me. Definitely feel free to break in with your own commentary. Right now, I'm kind of only thinking, what do they call those, online games that deal with, movies, but they're not,
What?
Okay, so because I'm gonna have to talk about it now.
Yeah.
I think J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves have been doing that with all of the Cloverfield games.
Oh, ARGs.
ARGs. That's
alternate reality games.
Yeah. ARGs. And Cloverfield's ARG was about them waking up Clovey at the bottom of the ocean.
Okay.
I'm a nerd, so naturally I'm just oh, that's a giant sea monster. I would love to hear about a giant sea monster in this story. That'd be great.
I think we might be getting there.
I think we might
we might have
or ghosts.
Or
I'm
skinheads.
Seagull.
Underwater skinheads.
Patrick Stewart.
Nazi propeller. A Nazi submarine. I hung the bag from the shaft and began
Yeah, you did.
Oh, fuck.
Just start from and began the propeller.
I hung the bag from the big black shaft and began freeing the propeller. It didn't take long, and I returned to my tool bag. I noticed a strange crunching sound when I dropped the tools in the bag. When I looked in the bag, it was full of large shells, many of which I had just crushed. After getting out of the water and stripping off my gear, I began examining them. The shells had what appeared to be hieroglyphics etched onto them. I learned from one of the senior guys that this wasn't common, but it had happened to several of them before. On one other occasion, we were recovering a military aircraft. When we arrived, naval ships were on scene waiting for us to recover it for them. We were quickly briefed that they had lost communication with the pilot and wanted us to recover it so they can investigate. I was sitting comms and logs, communicate with divers and monitor depth and bottom time, when the divers reached the project. They reported that the plane was intact. We were all surprised. The supervisor asked how extensive the damage was, and they explained it was completely intact, as in there was no visible damage at all. It was just resting on the bottom. Even stranger, the aircraft canopy was still in place. That means the cockpit is still sealed. In other words, the pilot did not eject. But there was no sign of the pilot. We recovered the plane and the military took custody of it, and we never heard about it again.
I don't know. I probably don't talk about this enough with anyone, but I scuba dive.
What?
Yeah, I'm a master water open diver, and I've been diving since I was like 12. When he was talking about like max depth and stuff, like I just think about like what's the deepest I've ever been, which has to have been like 75 feet. I think I averaged out at like 78. We actually got to swim down near a plane that was landed, that was taken from a junkyard and specifically put into the ocean next to a reef for diving tours. As shitty for the environment as that sounds.
Yeah.
But it made for very interesting habitat for certain animals after the couple years, and I remember seeing both an octopus and an eel on that dive, and it was really cool. So I'm like, this story is like relatively accurate so far as like knowledge.
Yeah. That's some cool fucking color commentary.
Yeah, I don't talk about it to anyone because
Yeah.
I've only ever done it with my family, and it's not something we can take pictures of, you know, like I'm sure there are boat pictures, like me
Right.
on a boat, but it's just like, who the fuck likes that?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, if you ever find something like a skinhead submarine, let me know.
Yeah, no, skinhead
Yeah.
sitting in an airplane in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the coolest thing that's ever happened to me was sharks. I could tell a horror story afterwards about barracudas and sharks.
All right. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I witnessed another strange occurrence from topside at the location of a planned demolition. It's necessary to explain that one way you can keep track of a diver is to watch their bubble stream. When a diver inhales, the helmet's demand regulator provides air from their umbilical. Then when they exhale, it's exhausted into the water and floats up to the surface. On topside, you can watch the bubbles to get a general sense of where the divers are. Now on this occasion, we were hundreds of miles from land, and we had placed 2 divers in the water. About an hour into the dive, we started noticing something strange was happening. There were 3 distinct bubble streams coming from where they were working. At first, we assumed there was a current and it was affecting them, but soon we noticed a 4th set of bubbles coming from a distance. It stopped about 20 feet from the divers, near the other mysterious bubbles. We asked the divers, but neither of them could see anything out of the ordinary. Then, even from the surface, we heard a blood-curdling screech from the waters. Then silence. The divers weren't too concerned. We hear strange things all the time. Sound travels well in the water, and you learn to assume it's a long distance away.
Plus, like fucking whales and shit, dude.
Whales are fucking creepy as shit.
Screech is like
Have you seen some of those motherfucking
I've also
fish?
swum with dolphins. It's just like screech, screech, screech.
Anglers with a...
That's like way.
That's a little deeper.
I don't. Are they that deep?
No.
Have they said anything?
I feel
about,
like you can't go that deep
no people
without like tin canning. Like
there's
there's some
huge
limit to-
suits. But
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially they would go like anything down in like fucking trench. You know?
Yeah, but soon it looked like the water in the distance was boiling, and it was getting closer. It wasn't boiling though. It was countless new bubble streams moving nearer to the location where divers were working. The supervisor ordered the divers to get onto the dive stage, lifted back to the surface. The bubbles were frighteningly close now, and the divers being lifted out said they'd begun seeing shadowed figures in the distance. They couldn't quite make out what they were though. We elected to pull the divers out without completing their decompression stops, and throw them into our hyperbaric chamber. During another dive, near the Bahamas, I had a frightening experience. It was my first salvage job with them, so I got in with a highly experienced diver. At just over 200 feet deep, we were examining the sunken vessel for rigging points. As I approached the bow of the ship, I noticed he was investigating a damaged portion of the hull. He swam a few feet into the ship looking around. I asked him a few times if he wanted me to tend his umbilical, his air supply hose, from just outside the ship. It's highly advisable since it's dangerous to enter a sunken ship, to which he stated no. He didn't want to enter the ship. He insisted he was on the port side of the ship. Assuming he was disoriented, I reached in to grab him. Just before touching him, I realized there were no bubbles coming from the helmet. Whatever this was, it wasn't breathing. I backed up and reported that something else was down here. I expected mockery, but there was none. The next thing I heard was the diving supervisor. Both divers, square yourselves away and get ready to leave bottom. When back on the surface, I asked the supervisor about it. He said he refused to put his divers in exceptionally dangerous situations. He then refused to clarify. We declined to complete the salvage. I'm not entirely sure how to explain this next dive. I was on the bottom, laying on my back, staring up towards the surface. All I could see were varying shades of darkness. Suddenly, I came to my senses. I had no memory of how I got here. I realized I couldn't remember getting into the water, or even why I was here. I tried to will my body to stand up, but I realized I couldn't move. I couldn't control my body. Over the comms, I could hear Topside instructing the other diver to find me. How long had I been down here? How long had I been missing? He told Topside that they grabbed him. I tried to shout out, but I couldn't even do that. After a few frantic minutes of communication between the diver and Topside, I noticed a shadow growing clear. It was moving towards me. Topside had found him. He reached down and he grabbed my harness to drag me back to our dive stage. As he pulled me, I rolled over and got a brief glance at my surroundings. I'd been laying in a pile of human bones. Ooh, bones. One of the strangest things I've ever witnessed happened on a body recovery mission. Even I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't been the one in the water. The military had found a site in which they believed the bodies of several missing World War II sailors would be found.
Are they Nazi sailors?
They're Nazi seamen. I entered the water with another diver with body bags to carry the remains. On bottom, we eventually found 3 skeletons. We placed them in the bags and returned to the stage. On our return trip to the surface, we saw the bags begin to move. At first, very slightly, then violently shaking and rolling. Bubbles escaped from 2 of the bags, and then they went still. The 3rd bag continued struggling. We reached the surface and sat down on the deck, stripping our gear immediately. We were afraid to touch the bags, but one of the tenders eventually unzipped the moving bag. An old, frail, very alive man rolled out, coughing water. We stood shocked, unable to comprehend what we were witnessing. Still not sure what I was doing, I ran to the other 2 bags and unzipped them. There were 2 more old men lying motionless in the bags. They appeared to have just drowned. We attempted CPR, but we were unable to revive the men. The man, who was somehow alive, was backing away from us, screaming of the horrors he witnessed. He screamed about an eternity spent burning. We locked him in a room and contacted the military that we had found a survivor. Within the hour, a military chopper was hovering over us to pick up the 2 bodies and the survivor. We had placed the bodies back in their bags and handed them over. The man bent over to inspect them, unzipping the bags. As he opened the bags, an unbearable stench overtook us. The bodies appeared to be in decay, as if they'd been dead and soaking in the water for a week. He zipped it back up and had them lifted into the chopper. Then we escorted him to the survivor. We could hear the screaming from down the hall. We opened the door and saw blood splattered on the walls. He was alive and screaming, but he too appeared to have started decaying. The man calmly walked him to the chopper, and the 2 of them were lifted on board. We never heard about them again. However, I went back and examined the room. With his blood, he had drawn hieroglyphics on the walls. I'm still not certain of what I viewed, but there were a few things that seemed to stand out. Waves, flames, and bodies. There was a tremendous amount of them on the walls, but shortly after I walked in, our supervisor began scrubbing the walls. He refused to let us examine it any further. I've heard rumors about the Keepers of the Deep. I've wondered about them for quite some time. I believe they are the link between many of our stories. Their myth within our team is seldom spoken of, but here's what I've gathered over the years. We are not meant to roam the depths of the ocean. And when a diver loses his life in the deep, it doesn't stay that way. They are cursed to forever roam the oceans. And when they find the living, in an envious rage, they will bring you back to the depths from which they came. Yeah, okay.
It got a little Lovecraftian.
It did.
End,
Yeah,
which I can't complain about because I absolutely adore Lovecraft. Oh man, where do I start? I've dived in like 4 different sections of the Caribbean to Central America waters. All of this just sounds really fucking weird. But like, honestly, there's something absolutely fucking terrifying about being down there. And like, I can tell you that. I'm also like paranoid in my fucking living space, so it's not like anything is different when I'm underwater. Usually I'm high. I haven't not dived high in like a long time because it just calms my nerves, and then I'm just like, yo, like I'm just fucking sifting through that shit, and I'm like, yo, fish. Yeah. You get too paranoid to let anything bad happen, honestly. And it's better to just, like, constantly be watching your gauge. Just like, oh, my air's great. I'm good. The depth is cool. Yeah, like, I'm cool. Hey, fish. Yeah, stories. I could think of 3 in particular that are creepy before I get into my part.
Bring the crepe. Make some crepes.
We were outside Mexico. We had... The boat ride out was maybe like an hour and 15 minutes. It was nuts. It was really out there in the ocean, but it was to a specific site, specific reef. You know, you have to have this kind of buddy system when you're down there.
Yeah.
While we were diving, my guy stopped us and did this kind of like wave with his hand, and he was basically telling us that like we were approaching heavy current. My sister's light as fuck. It takes a fucking belt of weights just to get her to stay down, like even with a buoyancy rig, and she's floating, and all of a sudden she's just fucking gone. She's just fucking gone, dude. And all of us are just like, where the fuck? And my mom is just like holding on to her because we are passing through like a giant fucking turbine of current. And I was.
So your mom had her at this point?
Yeah,
okay.
No, but she was drifting.
Yeah.
She was drifting, like physically, like above and behind. Cause I'm like looking, cause I get down there, dude. I'm usually like 6 inches off the floor, and I'm just looking at fucking everything.
Right.
A couple years later, we were in the Bahamas. I've dived like 16 or 17 times. Barracudas, man. Like, there's a reason Finding Nemo, like, fucking antagonize them. Because they are considered, like, I know the sharks get this kind of, like, bears of the sea kind of accurately, analogy. So, if that's that, then, like, barracudas are, like, the wolves of the ocean. And I shit you not, they're the creepiest motherfuckers. They're, like, 80s horror slasher killers in fish form because they just bob behind you. They do not fucking move. The water just floats them towards you. They do, and then they dart at shit. It's just nuts. And their teeth they're fucking ugly too. They are gross. And I'm sitting here. My brother wasn't good to dive, so it's me with my stepdad, my mom with my sister, and of course we're in the fucking back, and of course these fucking barracuda, like 6 or 7 of them, because they have a pack mentality, are bobbing behind my fucking sister. And I'm like, yeah, she's tiny. Stay the fuck, like, I'm like doing the shaker, this underwater, like, communicating mechanism that helps, like, carry a sound to get people's attention to my dive instructor, and I'm just like, I did, like, a Pac-Man eating hand towards, like, a small hand, which is, like, my sister, and my dive instructor is just like, he just kind of nodded us forward. He was like, yeah, you better, keep up. Stay in the huddle of people. There had to have been 20 people in the group. I've only gone on 2 or 3, like, solo dives with, like, 2 or 3 people.
So would the barracudas
it's usually
have...
a fucking tour of people down
there. Right. Would the barracudas have attacked? Like, is there any point where they get enough numbers?
No, when I came back up and talked to him, he was like, they do that, it's creepy, I know, like, the guy dives, like, he worked there, he dived there all the time, like, he's a master who was hired to do this shit, and he was like, it happens, they're just creepy, I've never seen them hit anyone, I've never seen them gone towards anyone, they will get really close to you and it'll freak you out, but I've never seen them attack anything but fish. He said he has seen like 4 take down a fucking grouper at one point, which is nuts because they're huge. And then my first and favoriteest story to tell is when I was I dived in Disney once in the living seas, like the section where you go on the ride and you could see all the fish. That's actually an aquarium that you could dive in. You could pay.
Oh my god! Okay.
And like the Finding Nemo thing happens and then it drops you off at the dive place where you can go to that restaurant and look at people diving and shit. Right. I dived in there and I was doing all this funny shit in front of the mirror and people were like clapping and pointing at me and I was like, yeah, I'm the fucking number one. Because I was like 12 or 14.
You're the shit.
So I was just like this fucking doughy cute kid just making funny faces about eating food in the mirror or in the window. Oh, it was great. In this kind of closed off space, you don't really need to partner. You could just it wasn't huge. You could look across the entire fucking thing from one end to the other. There was nothing obstruction. There's this little underwater thing that you could go into, and it has like an air pocket, so you could like take out and talk to people if you're in the same little underwater UFO thing. So I get down there, and I see my stepdad, and he's just like, yo, did you see this shark? And I was just like, no, there's a shark in here. I was fucking around with the sea turtle for a little bit, and he was like, no, there's a shark. And I think the dive instructor is like watching it. And I was just like, you're fucking with me. You're fucking with me. And he's like, no, go. My stepdad's a real fucking dude. And of course I'm just like, bullshit. And I'm like right in the middle of the tank. I'm looking around, and I don't see shit. And I start hearing that communicator that just carries across the water. And
so what you just shake the water?
It's a shaker with a plug in it.
Okay.
And when you move it, it makes a wood block kind of noise in real life. Underwater, it hollows.
Okay.
And because there's air in it, it shoots out the same noise underwater because it's at a frequency that could carry it.
Okay.
And it produces this kind of underwater like horse clop. And it's just like the coconuts in Monty Python.
Yeah.
And I do a 360, and there's a shark 10 feet away from me, staring me in the fucking face. My instructor's laughing. He's just like, and I'm just, I shrugged, and he does this, and I have my hand up real high, and I'm just slowly lowering it. He just does that to me like 3 times, and I'm like, and so I let out air in my BCD, and I just exhale, and that carries your buoyancy all the way down. Because there's air, there's air in your vest to keep buoyancy up, and weights to hold you down to the center of gravity, and you have to kind of equal them out at one point. And I just let out all my air, and I sink to the fucking bottom, and this thing just glosses right overhead of me, like 5 feet above me, just. So it was fucking nuts, man. I fucking love sharks. They're so crazy.
So they put a shark in the tank?
There are they've never been lethal, they said. They are fed dead. They've raised in captivity kind of thing.
Holy shit. That's awesome.
Sharks, sea turtles, tons of really cool. Seahorses. It was the first time I saw seahorses.
Okay.
The coolest things I've seen in the wild, octopus, eel, crustaceans, weird crustaceans. Barracuda are fun to see, honestly, but they're terrifying.
Yeah.
Never seen a shark in the wild. Never seen turtles in the wild. Dolphins, I've seen dolphins. Dolphins are cool.
Probably good that you haven't seen a shark, at least a big one.
In the wild? Yeah, no, that's why I will never dive in Australia.
Yeah.
My mom is just, Great Reef, we need to do it. Because it's just number one. It's just number fucking one outside the Bahamas. And I'm just noping that. On the nose.
Make a good story.
Getting my legs bitted off would also make a good story.
This is a story about how I got my legs bitted off. And then some dude on Reddit would be like, this is unrealistic.
And then I have to take a picture of my fucking missing legs. So this is the part 2 of the Confessions of a Deep Sea Diver. Before I share anything further, there are a few things I'd like to clarify. I received an astonishingly large amount of comments and personal messages since the post. Separately, Django's giving an airway signal to his...
He got dick pics. He got dick pics from this post.
Nice. I love divers' tits. I love divers'
dicks.
Several people pointed out to me that there are probably very few people with experiences like these. And of those people, even fewer could say that they've recently left their job. Therefore, there are probably a lot of people out there who already know who I am, or could figure it out easily. That being said, I still believe that everybody deserves to know. First, I'm going to answer some of the most common questions I've received. Yes, I've experienced a lot of terrifying things in the ocean, but when you consider the amount of dives I've made, the experiences have truly been far and few between. Basic information about our dive gear. While it does vary based on the job, we do have a standard we typically use. We are hard hat divers, meaning we wear helmets, not scuba. It is surface air, supplied air. We have an air system on the surface which runs through an umbilical cord down to the divers. The umbilical attaches to the helmet to supply the air. Woven in with the umbilical are our essentials. Without getting too technical, there's a line to air supply, electricity for light, communications, and essentially a depth gauge. Additionally, we wear a tank on our back as an emergency gas supply. It doesn't contain much, though. Just enough to get the surface in an emergency. We don't use rebreathers for the work we do. We do, however, occasionally use a full face mask instead of a helmet, or scuba if it's more practical, but it rarely is. The Keepers of the Deep. I've never found any information about them online. The only people I've heard discuss them were the members of my team. I've been told other teams had run-ins with them too, but even the guys on my team are hesitant to speak about them. I'll answer more questions as they arise, but I'll get back to why you're really here. While working on an oil rig, we were utilizing an ROV, and it was Cloverfield, ready for it. Imagine a small remote control submarine to do inspections. We'd been hired to inspect for structural damage or deficiencies after the rig had complained of abnormal vibrations. During operations, the ROVs are tended from a line that offers power, a strength member, and transfer video and sonar images back to the topside. As the ROV descended into the darkness below, we began to notice thin scratches along the surface. At first, it was barely enough to rip the marine growth off of the metal, but as we got deeper, the scratches turned to gouges. As we descended even deeper, we began to notice that the scratches appeared deliberate. We pulled the ROV up close to inspect. There, before us, were images. There were hieroglyphs carved into the metal, and they were fresh. The deeper we got, the older the carvings appeared. They were corroded and partially covered in growth. Whatever was making these carvings was working its way up from the bottom. Then the ROV stopped responding. It began shaking back and forth. We lost power to it. We tried to pull it up by tending to its line, but it seemed stuck. Then we felt it, tugging against the line, but it was coming from the ROV's side. Something was pulling it deeper. 2 more guys jumped onto the line and struggled to pull it back up. The line began creaking and parted. We pulled up the remainder of the line, but the ROV was gone forever. The supervisor was then left with the task of figuring out how to report our findings to the oil company. One incident took place about a year ago. During a salvage job, we were in the process of installing the rigging gear. While facing the ship with my back to the open ocean, I hadn't noticed anything approaching. Suddenly, something smashed into the tank on my back hard. I was slammed into the ship, flattened against it by force. I turned around and there was nothing. I would later learn that I had several bruised ribs from the impact. After reporting to the other diver and topside, we were told that they were going to pull us. We got back onto the stage and started being lifted towards the surface. We kept our eyes peeled, scanning into the not-too-distant shadows. During a compression stop, we began seeing a shadowy figure circling around us. We continued to monitor it as it got closer and closer. We began to see it more clearly. There was a massive shark circling us. Now, I've never been afraid of sharks, but there's something about being circled by a massive shark in the middle of the ocean, dangling from a chain, that can instill a new phobia in the bravest men. Keep in mind we aren't in an enclosed cage, just on a platform to stand on. It felt like being served on a platter. It eventually circled close enough to see its features, but I didn't recognize its species. It was bigger than a great white with entirely different coloration. Oh my god, it's the fucking shark that killed Steve Zissou's partner in
Is he gonna kill
the Wes
it?
Anderson movie. Well, I mean, Bill Murray kills it. Oh no, he doesn't. That's the point of the movie. He lets it go. He lets it go.
He learns forgiveness.
He does.
Steve Zissou.
He does.
Zissou.
Life Aquatic. That's what it's called. Great movie.
Multipass. That's my favorite part of the movie. When Steve Zissou goes out to the airport, he's like, multipass. That's my favorite.
Fucking hate you. It was mostly. Is that Fifth Element? Is that Fifth Element reference in our podcast? It was mostly black with a few gray features. It continued eyeing us as we sat there helpless, praying to be left alone. By the time we completed our decompression requirements, it was nearly close enough to touch. The stage lifted us up and out of the water, relieved that the shark had not decided to find out how we taste. On surface, we deduced that the shark had lunged at my back, but had only managed to hit the emergency gas supply cylinder. We did another dive, this time in crystal clear waters. And there's something nice about getting a job in waters where you can actually see your surroundings. The visibility was over 100 feet. We got to the bottom and began work. There were 2 missiles that had been ejected from a military aircraft and had not detonated. We were briefed on their location and told they were not armed and would not detonate provided they were handled appropriately. We located them much easier than expected and began preparing to rig them up. Just as I laid my hands on the first missile, my dive buddy said, "Oh shit." My stomach dropped. I don't care how many times you've worked with an ordnance. I sincerely believe you will always have that uncomfortable sensation in your gut and nervousness in the back of your mind. I looked up and realized he wasn't talking about the missile. He saw a wall of sand rising in the distance. Something, hopefully just the current, was kicking up the sand from the bottom of the ocean. But the wall of sand was growing and was just about 30 feet tall. Even worse, it was approaching us. Sandstorm. Come on, Sandstorm. Soon it was upon us.
You're just doing like the first 3 notes.
Yeah. It's hard to describe what bad visibility does in the water. It's not a matter of not having enough light, it's a matter of too much crap in the water blocking the light. Imagine if you can that this fog is... And now all I'm thinking about is those not necessarily shitty mummy movies, but Brendan Fraser.
Where he's in the biplane and the wall. Listen, I'm not a mummy historian.
I'm just saying. Imagine fog, but imagine if you can, the fog is thicker than anything you've ever witnessed. And I think of mummy. Yeah. I'm talking about fog so thick that you could have a flashlight pointed at your eyes from an inch away. I'm gonna have to play it underneath us so that we don't sound like idiots.
Good.
Oh, I'm talking about fog so thick that you could have a flashlight pointed at your eyes from an inch away, but you are completely blind to it. That's some thick fucking fog.
It's fog.
That's what bad visibility is in the water. The moment the sand hit us, we were engulfed in pure darkness. I placed my hand against my faceplate, but couldn't even see it. After a few moments, we began hearing a metallic scraping sound. Then, as swiftly as it arrived, the sand was gone. We had crystal clear waters again, except that there was no sign of the missiles. I had been within arm's reach when the wall of sand hit us, but now even feeling around under the sand revealed no trace of them. The next incident occurred during a humanitarian job that we volunteered to perform. After a portion of bridge collapsed over 50-foot deep ocean waters, we volunteered to recover the vehicles and hopefully the bodies. By the time we arrived on the scene, the collapse had taken place just over a week ago. We spent the first day surveying the area and developing a plan to lift the most we could in the week time frame we had available. By the start of day 2, we were actively pulling vehicles off the bottom. It was a difficult job to say the least, but not because of the effort required. The state of disarray in the cars was heartbreaking. These weren't military pilots or sailors lost at sea, these were families on vacation or people commuting to work. It was hard to say what was harder. The cars where we found an entire family, with the parents' seatbelts unbuckled and them in the backseat having been trying to unbuckle their children. Or the cars where the parents got out, leaving the children buckled in the backseat. I tried not to imagine the panic that had been going on inside the cars as they flooded from broken windshields or windows as people frantically tried to escape, but I couldn't forgive those that left their family to drown. Each day we moved on to a new section of cars, and on to the 4th day, we started noticing several of the cars had their doors open and nobody inside. We were happy to find easier work, especially under the assumption that the tragedy had been lessened by people escaping the wrecks. That is, until I began rigging a minivan for removal. The family inside hadn't been so lucky. As I ran slings through the van and prepared it to be lifted, I noticed the other diver inspecting the rigging gear. He began undoing one of my shackles. I asked what he was doing, and the response was not what I'd hoped for. I'm checking this truck for bodies. I felt the familiar sick in my gut sensation. Slowly I crept over to the diver and turned his body toward me. It resisted, but slowly turned its face towards me. Its faceplate was fogged up, and I fought my better judgment. I leaned in close, and I wish to this day I hadn't. It was dark, but I could all too clearly make out the features, rotting flesh. The person wearing this helmet had long since passed away. I lost my confidence, starting to scream. My comms were blazing, divers and topside were frantically trying to get my attention, but I was focused on only one thing. I was scrambling backwards away from him, but I had fouled my umbilical rigging gear in my state of panic. The thing had again returned its focus to the minivan. As I frantically cleared myself from the slings, I noticed the telltale lack of bubbles coming from the helmet. It was opening the minivan door and reaching inside. As I swam away from the van, I watched it grab one of the passengers and drag them into the darkness. This is when I began to realize I might not be cut out for working beneath the seas. I continued diving for longer than I know I should. The entire time, the thought lingering in the back of my mind, I need to get a safer career.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
What happened to the diver? Like, he went down with a dude, and then the dude
died
down there?
And then something took over his body that made it decay just as fast.
Became a zombie diver.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, I'm not buying into that so much as I like the shark story. I like the shark one. That one was good.
The shark story almost doesn't seem like part of the same series because it's completely 100% realistic.
But I feel like it's just like the Ranger stories, like the varying spectrum in the same story just makes it sound like the less believable things are just a little bit more believable because of the context they're presented in. And we've gone from stairs in the middle of the forest to creepy insect noises and cats.
True.
You know, so it's like
people freaked out but nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dead bodies and shit. Like that's natural, so you're going to find that shit.
Yeah.
I remember one of the best comments on, like, I think part 2 was, if you see stairs down there, don't touch them.
What, part 2 of this?
For the Confessions of a Deep Sea Diver, yeah.
I just started seeing stairs.
Okay, so this is going to be part 3 of the, and last part that I know of right now. You know, we could always cover it later if I stumble across more. But, this is part 3 of the Confessions of a Deep Sea Diver from Reddit No Sleep.
This is part 1. This is the same text as part 1.
Oh shit, is it?
Yeah.
So there wasn't. Maybe they just reposted.
Or it's repeating itself.
I don't think so. I don't think it's that kind of meta. Okay, my bad. I'll just cut all that then.
So there's 2 parts.
So there's 2 parts.
2 parts.
That's, but we could talk about it. What did you think?
I liked it. Obviously, the comparisons to the Ranger stories are evident, so I'll just make the comparison right now. What I liked about it, above the Ranger story, is the common thread. His whole thing about trying to explain, like, the Keepers of the Deep, and, like, hieroglyphics kept popping up in a lot of the stories and whatever. I liked that there were common elements throughout that kind of tied them into a bigger narrative. On the same token, I disliked the fact that, and we talked about this when we first started talking about the Ranger stories. I feel like the scope of what he's trying to do with the search and rescue stories is so small. He's trying to say, here's some weird kind of stuff that happened to me, like, take it or leave it. Whereas this guy is a little more aggressive in being like, here's some supernatural shit that happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, it fucking happened.
And I don't work anymore. Because
and I don't work anymore, and, like, I'm a real person.
There's that kind of undertone to the search and rescue stories. Because he I don't think he talks about it like he still does it, does he? Or is he? No, he's still active, isn't he?
I don't know.
He just started talking.
He talks about all this stuff in the past
I don't think
tense,
he's quit yet. He just talks about wanting to quit from some stuff.
Okay.
Whereas the deep sea diver one is, definitely more aggressive. Definitely like, he was just like, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
This is enough bullshit. And who could fucking blame him?
Darude, Sandstorm.
Yeah.
Sharks, Mexicans, hieroglyphics.
Nazi semen.
Big black shafts. Really, that's enough.
Those
for
are the take homes. Yeah, those are the take homes for me. Yeah, and all of those are no's.
Hard nose.
Yeah. We're gonna end the episode with a couple of the search and rescue stories. Like as per usual, we're now starting the spin-off stories. This is told from the same guy, but it's a retelling of other Rangers' experiences.
Okay.
So he kind of has this narrative I don't have any more weird stories to tell, but I know a lot of people who now, because of this, are starting to tell me their weird stories.
Cool.
So this one is under the title of Ranger KD Stories, which is actually what it's found on, like, separate Reddit's no sleep threads called Search and Rescue Stories.
Awesome.
So yeah.
All right. So
Definitely take it away.
the first she told me in response to my asking about her most traumatic calls. She shook her head and told me that really bad calls happen more frequently on the mountain, since the potential for nasty accidents is higher. About 5 years ago, one of the parks she worked at had a string of disappearances. It was a bad year, she said, one of the worst on record as far as weather went. They were getting about a foot of new snow every couple days, and there were a few avalanches that killed some climbers. They'd warn people about staying on the mapped areas, but of course there's always those who don't listen. In one particularly nasty case, an entire family got wiped out because the father decided he knew better than the officials, and he took them out into an area that wasn't safe. They were snowshoeing, and as best KD could figure, they'd walked onto a shelf of snow that looked solid but actually wasn't. It gave way, and this family went ass over tea kettle almost 300 feet down the slope. It's a great saying.
We talked about it on your first episode, I think.
Did we? Was it in
Yeah,
the story?
it happened in one of your first 2 episodes.
Fucking ass over tea kettle.
We
It's just fun. It's old-timey. It gave way, and this family went ass over tea kettle almost 300 feet down a slope. They landed on the rocks at the bottom, and the parents died instantly. One of the kids did as well, but the other 2 survived. One had a broken leg and fractured ribs. The other was almost unharmed, save for some bruising and a sprained ankle. The uninjured child left his sibling behind and set out to find help. Katie said the kid didn't make it more than a half a mile before the storm overtook him. The kid stopped to try and get warm, or maybe just to rest, and ended up freezing to death. They ended up finding the family with the help of some witnesses who saw them heading out into the wilderness, and she was just the one to find the kid who frozen to death looking for help. She said it had started to snow, just enough to obscure long-distance vision, but not enough to make searching impossible. She said she saw a figure sitting in the snow up ahead, and she got to it as quickly as possible. She described in detail how, as she got closer, she realized first that it was a child, second that they were deceased, and third that they had frozen in one of the most pitiful positions she's ever found a corpse in. The kid was sitting upright, with his knees tucked up against his chest. His arms were curled around him, and his head was tucked up in his coat. When she moved the coat to look at his face, she saw that he died crying. His face was twisted, and the tears were frozen on his cheeks. She said it was painfully obvious that the kid was terrified when he succumbed to hypothermia, and as a mother, it broke her heart. She told me repeatedly that she hopes the father is burning in hell as we speak.
that one hurt. That one was
one's
tough because
dark.
as you were reading it, I was just like, honestly, as a kid, I think the most acceptable way to die would be freezing to death, because like drowning is just too fucking much. Fire is too fucking much. Like, the nicest way for a kid to die from natural effects is probably freezing to death. It's
Or, like, falling. Like, as long as you
I
hit
don't know.
your head.
I would think going to sleep is better than actual pain.
So you just want to go to sleep cold and not wake up.
Essentially,
Alright.
there's some kind of peacefulness to that.
Yeah.
As fucked up as it sounds.
Alright.
The other traumatic story she told me about that stood out in my mind was one that happened when she was a rookie. Her team got a report of an experienced climber who hadn't come home the previous day. His wife was convinced that something bad had happened because he'd never failed to come home on time. They went out looking for him and had to climb what sounded like some very technically challenging parts of the mountain. They got to a relatively flat area and Katie started seeing blood in the snow. She followed the trail, and as she went, she started seeing little bits of tissue. I don't know if she means Kleenex or human. She wasn't sure exactly what...
Well, she means human.
Does she?
She means body parts.
What about bloody nose? Dude got a bloody
But
nose. He was
it's
climbing
obviously,
so high.
it's a horror.
I'm just
it's a horror story.
Shush,
So it's obviously...
shush.
No, but obviously,
he was
little
just
bits
like,
of tissue. I don't think anyone at home is like, oh,
She
maybe
wasn't
they
sure
mean...
exactly what body part it had come from. I just needed one more sentence for the context to set in. But the farther she followed it, the more there was. She follows this blood and tissue trail to a sheltered area under a cliff face, and she finds the climber. She said there was so much blood, more than she'd ever seen before. He was lying face down, one arm stretched in front of him as if he died crawling. She looks closer and sees that he's been partially disemboweled, which is where the tissue she'd seen had come from. The guy has an ice pick tucked in his hip holster, and it's covered in blood. Of course, they'll never be sure exactly what happened, but she said as best as she can figure, this is what went down. The guy had been attempting to climb up to the next area and been using his ice axe to ascend. He'd probably hit a loose patch and fallen on the way down, or possibly when he landed he'd gotten impaled by the axe, and it had disemboweled him. He'd drug himself along, tearing pieces of himself out as he went, and had died under the cliff face. She isn't terribly bothered by gore, but I guess a few of the guys who came to help her remove the body threw up when they turned him over and got a good portion of his intestines spilled out.
That's fucking gross.
Oh. That was good. Yeah. No, I feel like that's much more likely to actually have been found in the in the forest.
That has literally someone has died from a climbing
that
axe.
That has happened somewhere.
Yeah. I mentioned to her that I was interested in hearing about any experiences she had with people completely disappearing. Her eyes lit up, and she leaned in close to me. "Want to hear a real doozy?" she asks. She tells me about how, when she first got started, there was a case that got a lot of attention in the media. A family had been out berry picking in an area of the forest very close to the entrance of the park. They had 2 little boys, both under the age of 5, and at some point during the day, one of them vanishes. There's an absolutely massive search, and they find absolutely nothing. It's another of those cases where it's like the kid was never there in the first place. The dogs just sit down and don't pick up anything. No trace of the kid is found. The search goes on for about 2 months, but is eventually called off. Fast forward to 6 months later. The family comes back to place flowers at a memorial that's been set up for the kid. They bring their other son. While they're placing the flowers, they lose sight of the kid for about 3 seconds, and in that span of time, he vanishes into thin air. Now, obviously, the parents are beyond devastated. It's awful enough to lose one child, but to lose 2 is beyond imagining. The search is huge, one of the largest in state history. There are about 300 volunteers combing every inch of the park looking for the kid, but again, there's no trace of him. The search goes on for about a week, with people looking miles from the part of the park he vanished from. And then almost 2 weeks later, a volunteer almost 15 miles from the designated search area radios in that he's found the kid. They assume that the kid was dead, but the volunteer says he's not only alive, he's in good shape.
He said he's been lifting weights, he's been doing juice, he's been jogging.
The volunteer says
he's been eating a lot of kale.
He's not only alive, he's looking swole as fuck. KD and her team go out to recover the kid, and when they get there, she can't believe that this is the kid that's been missing. His clothes are clean, there's no dirt on him anywhere, he doesn't appear to be traumatized, he's hot as shit.
Yeah, man.
The volunteer says he found the kid sitting on a log, playing with a little twig bundle that's bound together with some old rope. Katie asks him where he's been, who he's with for those 2 weeks, and the kid tells her he's been with the fuzzy man.
I know a couple fuzzy men myself.
Now Katie firmly believes in Bigfoot, so she gets all excited and asks what he means by fuzzy. Was he hairy? But the kid says no, he wasn't hairy. He was a fuzzy man, and he describes a man that's blurry, like when you close your eyes but not all the way closed. He says the man came out of the trees and took the kid with him deep into the woods. The kid says he slept in a hollow tree and the fuzzy man was giving him berries to eat. Katie asks if the man was mean, if he scared the kid. And the kid says no, he wasn't scary, but I didn't like how he didn't have eyes. Katie says they get the kid back to headquarters and a cop takes him into town to talk more about what happened. She's friends with the cops that talk to him. And she said the kid described being kept in this tree by the fuzzy man and given berries whenever he was hungry. He was allowed to wander around a very specific clearing, but when he tried to go further, the fuzzy man would get mad and yell real loud, even though he didn't have a mouth. When the kid got scared at night, the fuzzy man made it go brighter, and he gave him a twig bundle. He said the fuzzy man was going to keep him, but he had to let him go because the kid wasn't the right kind. He either can't or won't elaborate more on that. Cops are just sort of left scratching their heads, and the search for his brother is renewed with no results. The kid has no idea where his brother might be, and they never find him.
It's like a Woods Slender Man story.
Yeah,
It's just great that you read it. It's, you know, he could have this kind of vibration mirage that I've seen used in like Marble Hornets, you know, or even in the video game. It's mentioned. I don't know. Could have been Slender Man in the woods.
But it's a nice Slender Man.
No, I mean Slender Man has, you know, What's the real takeaway? He takes you to another dimension. We don't know what happens there. Like,
He fucking turns you into a murderer.
I don't know. That's only when he proxies. I'm talking about, like, when he actually steals a kid. What does he end up doing with him, you know?
A kid?
I wouldn't surprise me if he's just feeding them fucking Captain Crunch and he's hiding in a closet, you know?
And he's like, hey, don't go there.
Hey!
Hey! What are you in the oven?
Come here.
What? Hey, no.
Stay. No.
Come on.
No.
Come on.
The last story that KD told me was of something that happened to her when she got separated from her training group when she was a rookie. I almost said a Wookiee. They were
That'd
learning.
be a fuzzy man.
That is a fuzzy man.
That would fit description.
We got it. Now we
He
know
yelled
why.
real loud.
Now we know he was like, eat these fucking berries, kid. But really, he was like,
The kid was like, I've seen Star Wars, I got this.
yeah, it's Chewbacca. They were learning the basics of high elevation, belaying on a well-mapped side of the mountain, and she had to use the bathroom. She went off about 50 yards from the group during a meal break and did her business. 50 yards? I really gotta, I gotta take a steamy
Half
shit.
a football field.
I gotta take a steamy shit and I can't let anyone smell this. I'll tell the rest exactly as she told me. So I go to take a piss.
No.
And once I'm done, I start going back to the group, but I've only gotten about 5 feet when I realize that I have no idea where I am. And this wasn't I got turned around lost. I mean, I had literally no fucking clue where I was. If you asked me, I don't even think I'd have been able to tell you what state we were in. It was sort of how I imagine people with amnesia feel, you know? What are you laughing at? My woman tone.
I love your character.
My womanly tone. You're completely lost, and you have no idea what to do.
She's like a search and rescue agent. She's like a 16-year-old girl. This is like her first job.
She's not 16. I'm 24. So I stood there for a while, just trying to figure out where the fuck I was and what I was supposed to do. But the longer I stand there, the more confused and turned around I get. So I started walking. As I recall, I just picked a random direction and went for it. And as I'm walking, I'm just getting worse and worse to the point where I have no concept of why I'm on the mountain in the first place. I'm just trudging through the snow, and then I start hearing this voice. It's kind of like inside my head almost. Like if a frog could talk, all low and croaky. I love this. And it's telling me over and over. I don't even know how to attempt this.
Oh, it's okay.
It's
okay.
It's okay.
She's a black guy.
It's okay. You just need to find something to eat. Find something to eat and you'll be okay. Just keep walking and find something to eat. Eat. So I start looking around for anything that I can eat, and I swear to God, I've never felt that hungry in my whole life. It was bottomless, and I think I had eaten just about anything you put in front of me right then. I had no concept of time, so I had no idea how long I'd been out when I hear an actual voice coming toward me. I go toward it and see one of the other search and rescue officers, and he looks fucking terrified. He's running toward me, asking if I'm okay and what the hell I'm doing out here, and the scary thing was, as he's running towards me, I kind of see myself reaching onto my belt for my hunting knife. I'm not even really thinking about what I'm doing, but what I am thinking is that I have to eat. If I don't eat, I'll never be okay again, so I just have to eat. He sees me doing that, and he backs off right away. He yells at me to put my knife away, that he's not gonna hurt me, and that kind of snaps me back. All of a sudden, I know exactly where I am, and I put the knife away. I run to him and ask him how long I've been gone, thinking he'll tell me I've been gone for a half hour or so, but he tells me I've been gone for 2 fucking days. I've gone over 2 peaks and ended up almost on the other side of the mountain, and if I'd kept going, I would have ended up wandering into about 300 miles of wilderness. They'd never have found me. He can't believe I'm not dead, and of course I don't know what the fuck to think. To me, no time has passed at all. I don't say anything, I just go back with him to a rendezvous point and taken back to headquarters to be airlifted to the hospital. When I get there, they do all kinds of tests and try to figure out what happened. as best as they can guess, I had some kind of weird fugue state, which is kind of like amnesia or a weird seizure that knocked my brain out of whack. But the truth is, we really don't know. It's never happened again, but I'll tell you, ever since then, I never go out there alone. People rag on me for making them come with me when I have to leave the group, but I just tell them that listening to me piss in the snow is better than losing me for 2 fucking days on a freezing mountain.
Bitch.
No, Katie got some sass. She's spicy.
Katie was lost on a mountain for
She's
2 goddamn
spicy.
days.
Yeah, she was. Oh, so that's all we're gonna do on this episode of Let's Suppose Do. You know, Django Phillips, I have to ask you, how do you feel? How do you feel about this episode?
Oh my god, so good. We saw...
You're in a state of euphoria.
We saw... Yeah, a little bit. We saw sharks. We talked about... barracudas. We had a big long shaft, and we got it free.
God damn it, you always gotta talk about the shaft.
We had a little bit of a... We really covered literally a lot of ground, and I'm happy about it.
Oh.
It's good scope.
Yeah, it was good.
Good talk.
It was good. I always enjoy reading these stories, this kind of vein. But you know, we're gonna have to tackle Dogscape eventually.
Just keep fucking putting it off.
It's like we're gonna have to do a Dogscape special. Like
we really do.
I think we read more than 20 pages worth of material tonight, and
yeah.
I think Dogscape is just about 20 pages.
Dogscape is manageable. My only question is if it's all good enough to put, if it's all to the same standard to put in a podcast.
I've only read log 1 and log 20.
Okay.
So I really don't know what to make of it.
Fair.
Is it like an alternate reality thing?
This is the thing. He's on a fucking planet, and the planet's made of dogs.
Okay. No, that's all you had to say. We'll save that for your next episode.
Yeah, alright. Fair enough.
Yeah, so next time, Dogscape.
Ooh, I'm excited.
I feel like this is the right... Though?
I actually am legitimately excited. I feel like this is the right time to tackle it.
I was going to say, what else are we going to do next? We would just do randos if we come to, 2 weeks from now, I'm just going to ballpark.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks from now, we sit back down and you say you don't want to do Dogscape. Like, really, when else are we going to do it?
No, we're going to do it.
Eventually.
I'm going to find a craft brewery that has like a dog as his logo. And I'm going to bring a 6-pack.
Get excited.
Yeah. And I'm going to be like...
And I'm not going to drink it.
I'm going to be like, Captain Death, listen. There's this one weed that they make out in Oregon, and they put dog stickers on it. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have to buy it.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to the day.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice.
Any final words?
Yeah. Don't stop believing.
All right. Oh, that's it. That's it. I got nothing. I got nothing. I got nothing.
No?
I just, I think to myself, and it's not the first time I thought of it, actually. I always want to end the episode by saying, like, hey, thanks for listening. But, like, the truth is like, you're welcome. Because, like, this is good programming, and you are in our presence.
So from all of us...
You are the audience.
To all of you, you're welcome. It's perfect. That's a good sign off.
You're welcome.
2 to the 1, 1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees. Smoke so much weed you wouldn't believe, and I get more ass than a toilet seat. 3 to the 1, 1 to the 3. I met a bad bitch last night in the D.